In a land where death meant eternity, one king was never meant to be remembered. A king whose name was scraped from the records, whose face was defaced, and whose tomb, well, nobody knows what happened to his tomb. It is lost. But who was he? Did his enemies bury him alive? Did he flee to start a new life? Or did something sinister happen to him in the Valley of the Kings? This is the mystery of the pharaoh who disappeared. Ancient Egypt was obsessed with death. You know that. Massive pyramids were built to house their dead kings. Elaborate burial chambers were filled with treasures and servants to keep them company in the afterlife. And no matter how big or small, every ruler, pharaoh or not, had one thing in common: a tomb. Except, of course, for one king who could have been you, me, anybody, except that we have no idea who he was or what happened to him. His cartouche, the oval emblem containing his name, was removed from all known records, including the one place where it should have survived, his own tomb. In its place, only a blank void remains. How could such a glaring gap appear in the historical record? Was there some kind of conspiracy? Why would priests purposefully erase a pharaoh's name from history? And most importantly, where is his tomb? After decades of research, scholars have come up with 3 different answers. But before we get into those, let's talk about this whole mystery in the first place. Now, the Egyptians were very superstitious about their burial chambers. They believed that if your tomb was disturbed, then your soul would wander the earth as a restless spirit, unable to find peace. As you can imagine, when excavating a tomb, even today, archaeologists don't just barge in and steal whatever treasures are inside. Instead, they painstakingly remove the curse and secure the tomb before removing any artifacts. Even so, things have gone missing. Not small things either. We're talking entire tombs that vanished without a trace. Take, for example, the tomb of Menmalka, which was discovered in 1940. He was a minor official during the reign of Tutankhamun, but archaeologists never found his final resting place until nearly 8 decades later, in 2018, when it was identified using ground-penetrating radar. Or take the famous case of the Princess of the Two Lands, a daughter of Ramesses III, who also had her tomb looted and destroyed. Fortunately, archaeologists were able to use the scarab beetles adorning her coffin to help identify her. Then there's the tomb of Amarna, an advisor to Akhenaten, which was identified in 2017 after researchers noticed that its layout matched descriptions from ancient texts. That is important because it shows that people at the time knew exactly where Amenhotep's tomb was located. But over time, knowledge of these sites faded away due to intentional damage. Most famously, there was the case of the missing cartouche in the Valley of the Kings. This is the location where almost every great Egyptian leader of the New Kingdom was buried. But in 1903, an excavation team working underneath the tomb of Ramses III stumbled across a chamber that didn't belong to anyone they recognized. Further investigation revealed that the floor plan was identical to the tombs of Seti I and Ramses II. But here's the catch. There were no wall paintings, no treasures, and no sarcophagus. It was completely empty. And the reason became clear once they examined the walls. All throughout the tomb, the name of the rightful owner was being defaced. Every mention of his name was being torn out, smashed, or covered over with plaster. Even the entrance was concealed with a false wall. After seeing this, it's easy to understand how everyone forgot about his existence, including Egyptologist Joyce Tildesley. Tu says that the tomb was clearly closed off, perhaps intentionally, sometime before the 12th century BC. But who was the unlucky pharaoh whose name was cut out of history? There are 3 leading candidates, and each of them might have met a grim end. One of them, of course, is the infamous Akhenaten. If you've ever seen Disney's The Egyptian, you probably remember that he was the Sun King who moved the empire's religious focus from the many gods of Egypt to a single god, Ton, the personification of the sun. He was a controversial figure who implemented radical reforms and created a rift between the royal family and the powerful priesthoods. Some historians even suggest that he tried to move his wife, Nefertiti, into a position of power, replacing the old religion with a matriarchy. His rivals, though, painted him as an ineffective weakling and stripped him of his credit after he died. So it's not impossible that they also tried to erase his memory. But here's the problem with that theory. Archaeologists know exactly where Akhenaten is buried. Deep underneath the Black Chapel in the Valley of the Kings, they even found his death mask, complete with the strange elongated skull that he and all of his children had. Plus, his tomb contains some of the world's most exquisite art. showing scenes from his daily life and depicting his many, many wives, so we can safely rule him out. That leaves us with two other possibilities, Smenkhare and Tutankhamun. Let's start with Smenkhare, who ruled Egypt for less than a decade, around 1643 BC, during his short reign. He reformed the economy and campaigned against the Hyksos, a group of foreign rulers who had invaded the eastern Nile Delta. But in year 10, he disappeared quite suddenly too, because according to Manetho, a historian from Alexandria, he was killed by his own son. Unfortunately for Smenkhare, Manetho was the only source to mention him at all. Aside from the sketchy account of his death, nothing else is known about him, not a single inscription or artifact. It's as if he vanished from history, which is why some Egyptologists believe that a rival priest initiated a campaign of erasure to hide his legacy. Now, there's a snag in this theory too. See, the traditional location of Smenkare's tomb was identified back in 1940, and it does exist. Archaeologists have uncovered the burial shaft, the entrance passage, and a central chamber. But here's the kicker. It's completely empty. Nobody's ever found a mummy, sarcophagus, or even a piece of pottery inside. So there are two possible explanations. Either Smenkare's body was moved sometime in the distant past, or he never had a proper tomb in the first place. As for Tutankhamun, he's another promising candidate. He was the boy king who came to power when he was only 9 years old and died when he was 19. At the time, his advisors were likely members of the notorious 39 who had ousted his father, Akhenaten, and returned to traditional Egyptian religion. The boy king's mother, Kia, was reportedly executed soon after he took the throne, suggesting that he was nothing more than a pawn in a larger struggle for power. Some scholars theorize that he wasn't even related to Akhenaten, and that his last name, Tutankhamun, was simply a title meaning living spirit of Amen. This claim is backed up by genetic studies of his mummy, which reveal that he didn't share any DNA with his supposed father or siblings. If he truly was an imposter, then it makes sense that his true parentage was erased and his tomb was hidden from view. However, we already know where Tutankhamun was buried. It's one of the most popular tourist destinations in Egypt. And to be fair, his tomb doesn't really have any of the hallmarks of a hidden burial chamber. It's small, barely bigger than the others, and decorated with some of the most beautiful artwork in the Valley of the Kings. Sure, the boy king's name was taken off the entrance, but that's a small detail compared to everything else. Plus, Howard Carter discovered his tomb in 1922, so unless the opening was somehow concealed for 3,000 years, this isn't our missing pharaoh. In the end, the identity of the vanished pharaoh will remain a mystery, but now it's time for you to make your voice heard. Comment below and tell us what you think happened to him. Is it the work of rival priests or some other great conspiracy? And do you think his tomb is still waiting to be found beneath the sands of Egypt? For more dramatic tales of ancient mysteries, stay tuned and leave a like. Thanks for watching.